And we're going to kick off with, I'm going to share my screen in a moment. We're going to start talking about a topic, which is feature adoption, how to track feature adoption, why it's important to track feature adoption. And I've got some slides here. I don't know if you've ever used Gamma, but I absolutely love that program. So I'm just going to share my screen and show you what we've got. So we're just going to look at Gamma here. Okay, so if you like the images, that's all Gamma. All credit to Gamma. All right, so what we're looking at here, what we're talking about today, and what we're going to cover is adoption, feature adoption in particular, not just product adoption, but specific features that are really important. And we're going to talk about why it's important to measure adoption. There's some in here that may not be obvious to you. We're going to talk about how to measure it. We'll have a quick look at Accoil, and we'll also talk about connecting your adoption numbers to your revenue numbers. So if you think things like upsells, churn, retention work, if you're in CS, if you're in account management, if you're looking after customers who are already on board with you, this will be really helpful to understand who is using what, and then also which accounts aren't using your key features. And that's a question that we get asked quite a bit. So the reality check here, a lot of the teams that we speak to feel stuck. They are tracking logins, they're tracking page views, but they don't really have a good sense of what their customers are actually doing in their product. So that's a broader sort of product analytics issue or concern, but what we're focusing on here is that key feature adoption. And if you look here at the research from Gainsight, customers who adopt key features are 31% less likely to churn. That means that they're going to stick around longer, have a lot higher lifetime value. And I think personally that this statistic here is actually a really important way to frame feature adoption. And one of the primary reasons why thinking about feature adoption and tracking it and measuring it and being aware of it is really important for a B2B SaaS company. So what does that really mean, right? If you've got companies adopting key features versus companies that are not adopting key features, some are 31% more likely to stick around. And so if you break that down, if you have a healthy churn, right? If you sort of benchmark B2B SaaS churn annually at 5%, you're doing pretty well, but of course you could always be doing better, right? So if you break down the numbers here, and this is what got me on this, is that a 31% reduction in likelihood to churn means a 1.5% gap or gain in customer retention, right? So it's not just a nice to have thing. It means that you have more predictable revenue, right? So if your churn is at 5% and you can get more of your customer base adopting those key features, you get to increase, or well, I should say decrease your churn, increase your retention, increase ARR, MRR, that sort of thing. So that it has a huge knock-on effect on your revenue. So we said in the event here that we we're going to talk about 5 reasons to measure feature adoption. Some of them are a bit surprising, and I learned a few things digging into this. So one of which is you spend a lot of time, money, energy, resources on engineering, building these features, building these products. And even according to Pendo, 30% of engineering resources are not necessarily recouping ROI, right? And that's not a great place to be, I think, personally. You know, if we're spending 30% and 1/3 of our time building products and features that people don't actually use, is that time well spent? Is that money well spent? Probably not. So, you know, one of the first reasons to go look at feature adoption is to understand what is that return on that development, on that engineering time and all those resources. Are we getting a return on that? Are we working on the right things or not? And having been at really small companies up to really big software companies, I can tell you that this is a problem that everybody sort of wrestles with. And of course, this goes back to, you know, like how do you prioritize roadmaps, all that sort of thing. But just as a number here, according to Pendo, if 30% of your engineering efforts are not being utilized by customers and not adding value to them, they're not really paying for them, are they? So it's a very low ROI on that. Validation and retention power. So reason number 2 to start tracking your feature adoption. And key features, again, I'll stress that, key features, something that, you know, I think we all want to track everything all the time, right? And so one of the important things is if you're getting started with this, find your 5 key features, the ones that you really know indicate stickiness. Or if you don't yet know that, that's an even better reason to start tracking this, because you can then start to see, you know, break down your customers by cohort, who's using these features, who's not, what does their behavior look like, what does their lifetime value look like, et cetera. So anyway, I got off track. Going back to another reason for tracking feature adoption is that validation and retention power. Is your product strategy sound? Are you building what you should be building? If you're running quarterly reviews, like feature health reviews, you can use adoption metrics to course correct, or as we'll see in other reasons why it's important to track this, you can inform other teams that, you know, we need to increase adoption on these key features because we know that these are important. And as part of this validation and retention thing here is actually keeping customers and being able to predict which customers you're going to keep. So that gives you early warning signs, perhaps if you can see that, a really big account isn't adopting the features that you know they should be. That could be an early warning sign. You can build automated alerts on the back of that to get your CSMs or account managers to jump in, reach out, say hi, educate people on these really important features to bring that adoption number back up. Yeah, how much you're charging is another good reason, right? So if you've got companies using features that are super valuable and you've got companies that are not using features that are super valuable, you will have two very different perceptions of the value that your product provides, right? And so adoption data can show what your customers value the most, but it can also sort of flip that on its head and indicate to you where you need to educate your customers more so that they get more value from your product and can justify how much money they're spending on your product or your app. This next one here, this valuation impact thing, I hadn't come onto my radar, but OpenView did some research and basically feature engagement correlates with up to 2x valuation multiples. So if you're building a company, if you're doing the build to sell, if you have intentions of it, or think maybe one day you might sell, having high feature engagement and adoption rates can actually double the valuation multiple, which could mean a lot of money, right? So worth paying attention to in the short term and in the long term, right? So you can get your price points nailed down. And in the long term, if you're going to 1.5 to 2x your valuation multiple, that's a pretty good ROI on that time spent. You can just see here, I'll share these slides too, repackage high adoption features into premium bundles. So there's a way that you can kind of leverage your knowledge of who's using your features into pricing power. Okay, how do you measure feature adoption? There are a few core metrics that you can start with, things like feature adoption rate, time to first use, how quickly are they getting to that? This is kind of like a time to value, time to first value idea, but I've always found that the value part of that equation is very hard to measure without having someone on the other end that is very good at articulating what that value is and when they got it. So time to first use is something that you can track. It's a lot easier to track that because they signed up today, they used the product, or they signed up today, they've used key feature number 1, 2, and 3 within the first week. At least that they're finding it. And then there is the feature stickiness. Are they using it daily? Are they using it monthly, weekly? I think it's up to every product owner, every company to know what a healthy use case looks like for their products, right? So if you have a feature that should be used daily, like if you're building Slack, right, you want people to use it every single day. We had a form builder. Some of our customers were pretty sizable, and they used some of their forms. Well, they even told us, hopefully we never have to use these. These are like incident capture response type forms where they're capturing bad things that have happened. So in their ideal world, they set up the form once and never ever use it. So understanding what a healthy use case looks like for your product is a good place to start, and will tell you, are you measuring daily active use? Are you measuring weekly, monthly active use? What does that really look like? And what does that number mean to you and your team? How do you go about improving this? So onboarding, which is super critical to retention, full stop, always be fixing that up, right? So if you have features that are sticky, you have features that are important, that customers who use these features tend to stick around a lot longer, how are you nudging them to use those things how are you nudging new customers and even new users at key accounts to use these features? And that goes back to onboarding. You can do things like in-app messaging, in-app nudges, targeted emails. Are you educating them through webinars, that sort of thing? And then, of course, you've always got customer feedback channels and listening. What are they actually saying to you? What is their support? What do their support inquiries look like? What are they asking about? What are they struggling with? All that sort of stuff is really fantastic feedback to understand. Do they know that this feature exists? Do they understand how to use it? Are they getting value from it? And then, of course, improvement tactics. There you got analytics integration. So that one's basically like, can you see which customers are using your features and which ones aren't? And then on number 3 here, the intervention playbook, based on the signals that you get from feature adoption rate, time to first use, frequency of use, are there automations like triggers, things that you can set up and take action on as a team to intervene with customers to make sure that their adoption rate is going in the right direction, in particular for those key features, right? So if you've got hundreds of features and you're not sure where to look, find the ones that are the most important, that indicate stickiness, and then start by tracking those. Don't try to do everything. You'll get overwhelmed. I've gotten overwhelmed. You need to start. I recommend that you start small, focus on the really important ones, and then you can start adding in new features to track as you build out your systems to watch those really important ones. So how does this connect to revenue, and why is this actually important? A 1.5% reduction in churn in real dollars can have a big impact on any business, I think, right? And so what we're looking at here is extra revenue per 100 customers. So you can scale this up if you want. But if you're reducing churn by 1.5% for every 100 customers, that is an increase in $15,000 per year if you've got a $10,000 annual contract value. If your ACV is 25K, 50K or higher, obviously that number just goes up and up and up. And so reduction in churn can have a massive impact on that top line revenue. What are you getting and how long are you keeping those customers, and what does that turn their lifetime value into? And if you have thousands of customers, you can imagine what the scale on this does. I haven't showed you Accoil yet and how you can actually track that. So if you want to start measuring and start acting, there's a really simple way. I'm going to show you really quickly here how to actually track your feature adoption in Accoil. Lots of products can help you see what your customers are doing, but not all of them are going to show you what feature adoption really looks like at the level of detail that you probably need it. What you have here is the features page in Accoil. You can see what features are being adopted in the last period here. So we've got 7 days. That has changed by 12%. That's good to know. But you can see, this is example data from a form builder. You can see that some of these things here, like exporting to PDF, that's actually tailing off. That's getting less use. Internal create view is tailing off. Adoption change is dropping pretty significantly. It's kind of up to you to determine, what does that really mean? Is that a super sticky feature? Is that something that you need to be paying attention to and intervening on? And if you want to get into the details for any one of these features, so we're talking about a form builder, right? If they're not actually using the form builder itself, that could be a big issue. And so adoption at 67% there, that might be something, even though it's gone up, you may want to look at, how do we make sure that our users are actually building new forms, right? So there may be a use case where customers come in, they build their forms, and then they don't build anymore, but they continue using them. That's good, but you probably want them to continue building more forms, find more use cases for your product, etc. So that could be a candidate there. If we know that that's a super critical feature, how can we get more of a user base within a customer account using the form builder? So that's just one way to look at it there in Accoil. Just to wrap up, measure feature adoption. If you can't measure it today, let us know. We're more than happy to help you, but start measuring it if you can. Start building intervention playbooks. Look for signals. Help yourself answer the question, so what does that mean? What does that really indicate to us as far as customer health, customer longevity, customer lifetime value? And then what are you going to do about it? And what actions can you as a team take? And I think that's just one last thing I'll really stress, is that you get a signal. This is really for teams that are looking to be proactive. Get the signal, understand what it means, and then decide what you're going to do about it. And initially that may be those sorts of things that do not scale, right? But then you can start automating. If you start seeing the same, say, feature that isn't being adopted over and over again, what are you going to do to automate that? Put it into onboarding, et cetera. So you can start to see how you can have an impact on the business, reduce that churn rate based on feature adoption, key feature adoption, and really just start to see that in the revenue. All right, so that was 31% less likely to churn, the title of our talk this week, how tracking feature adoption moves revenue. Hopefully that gives you some, maybe it lights a fire. Go check on your data. What kind of feature adoption metrics do you have? If you don't, how are you going to start tracking that? We've gone through 5 really important reasons, some pretty compelling reasons to start tracking feature adoption, and some ways that you can ingest that data. Think about, what does it really mean for you as a company, as a team, as an individual, if you're a CSM or an account manager, and then what are you going to do about it? So thanks for tuning in. See you on the next one.